Welcome back to another edition of the Sooner Pocket Podcast. I'm Sam here with Chris Knight. Make sure to check out our blog, www.soonerpocket.com. A lot of good content there, pre-game and post-game analysis, links to the YouTube channel, all that good stuff. Chris, how are things in Chicago this evening?
They're nice. Aside from our sports scene, they're pretty nice. You've got the Bears who just had to fire their offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. You got the Cubs who they're my team between the two baseball teams. They didn't even make it to the postseason this year. And the White Sox who had literally the worst season in MLB history. Let's see here. You've got the Blackhawks who are off to a rough start in the NHL. You've got the
The what?
Chicago Bulls who you've got the Chicago Bulls who are off to a rough start in the NBA. It's terrible.
And
But
on top of all
and
that, you're an OU fan.
yeah, it's been a rough fall. But in terms of non-sports things, the weather is kind of that nice sweet spot where it's not like blistering cold, but it's not hot out anymore. It's in the 40s and 50s every day now, and it's really pretty up here in the fall. So it's not too bad. Is is it still in the 70s and 80s every day in Norman?
Yeah, mostly. Not really in the mornings, but it's good. What was not in the 70s was the
Oh,
over-under.
here we go.
The total score between OU and Missouri ended up being a bit of a defensive showcase for a little bit until the very end. Uh, 30 to 23. Oklahoma took the lead on a scoop and score in the fourth quarter with about 2 minutes left. And somehow being up 23 to 16 in the final 2 minutes, we lost 30 to
In
23.
regulation.
Yep. I don't know how it's like I've said before, we snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. I don't know how we pulled that one out. Um, my initial thoughts on it, Jackson Arnold is a colossal disaster and turnover waiting to happen play after play. It's just a matter of when it happens. That's not to say Mike Hawkins was any better. Um, I would not be surprised before the end of the season with bowl eligibility hanging in the balance at this point across these final two games. Would not be surprised to see Casey Thompson get at least one trip onto the field that is not a garbage time trip.
I don't know. I'd be kind of surprised because here's the thing. Jackson Arnold's biggest thing is fumbles. He has fumbled the ball away way too much this year. One of his fumbles that luckily we recovered against Missouri, no one even hit him. He just dropped the ball. It was in the first quarter on a big third down too. He was just rolling out left and just dropped the ball. Don't know what happened there. Uh, when it comes to his accuracy, he has greatly improved from the beginning of the season. He was kind of an interception machine for a little bit, threw one in three consecutive games against Houston, Tulane, and then against Tennessee, and they were all terrible passes. He hasn't had an interception since, and he's been more consistent with the ball. He's shown good running ability. The tools are there for him to be a really good quarterback.
I
I
agree.
just I think if he could get the I think if he can get the fumbleitis out of the way, I mean it makes Jalen Hurts at his time at OU look like a ball security wizard. But if he could just get the fumbles under control, I really think he has the potential to be a great quarterback. There's just this has been such a perfect storm of bad circumstances this year. We have one of the worst offensive lines in college football. We have the worst offensive line I've ever seen at OU. Our best wide receivers are hurt. Farouk was in for a little bit, but there was one play where he kind of limped and then he didn't come back in for the rest of the game. Dion Burks we finally get him back, and he was a non-factor except for the play where he caught it on third down and proceeded to fumble it away. We've had a perfect storm of bad circumstances this year. I'm hopeful for next year. I'm hoping Brent Venables and Bill Bedenbaugh throw every resource that the state of Oklahoma has at a good offensive line. I know we've got some talented recruits coming in, but it's hard to play true freshmen. We have some talented guys in the 2024 class, but they haven't been able to play too much because they're true freshmen and still don't know what they're doing. They wouldn't be an upgrade. There were times in that Missouri game where Jackson Arnold could have done more, but the
Yeah.
offensive line has been so bad. I think you might have seen it. It was right after the fake punt. We had it third and goal at this point at like the 24-yard line. Jackson Arnold kept it, looked around for a minute, and decided to scramble. Deion Burks was wide open in the end zone, but he was so worried about what the offensive line was doing. He did one read and he ran. And it's so hard to play good football when you can't trust your teammates.
Yeah. I just, I think he is too much of a liability at this point in the year. Um, but I don't know that either of the other two options are going to be much better. I don't think it hurts to give Casey Thompson a crack at things, um, considering we've got to go 2-0 in our final two games, to make, whatever bowl we would end up in, the Clorox toilet bowl or whatever else it would be. So I personally, I think we'll see Casey Thompson before the season is up, but we'll see. Um, don't want to talk much more about the Missouri game. That was a
Nope.
that was a collapse of epic proportions across the rest of the college football world. Ole Miss knocked off Georgia 28-10. Um, Heck of a job by Ole Miss on both sides of the ball, squeezing 4 touchdowns out of Georgia's defense, and then using their defense to stifle Carson Beck, the Georgia running attack, all of it. Heck of a job there. Alabama won, I believe, 42-13 over LSU. Brian Kelly was going on a profane tirade on the sideline with 17, 18, whatever seconds left because Alabama was blitzing his quarterback. Mind you, LSU was inside the Alabama 30-yard line trying to score. I don't know what you expect there if you're Brian Kelly, but he was pretty upset by that. Iowa State, who people 2 weeks ago were talking about as a potential playoff team, lost their second in a row, losing to Kansas, 45-36. Particularly embarrassing this year. Kansas is awful. This isn't one of their little surprise trap years. So those were really the other three big, interesting games I saw across the college football world last week.
Yeah, it was a good week of football. Virginia Tech gave Clemson all they could handle and more in the first half. They were winning 7-0 at halftime, the one touchdown being a blocked field goal that was returned. But after that, Clemson just kind of put them to bed, outscored them 24-7 in the second half. Uh, Army, they were held in check for a lot of their game against North Texas. North Texas being led by former Oklahoma backup quarterback Chandler Morris. And Army, they were able to keep the undefeated season alive. If they can win their conference, if they can stay undefeated and win their conference championship, we just might see them in the playoffs. They won't make it past the first round, but it would still be cool to see. I tell you something that surprised me was how well Colorado's defense did against Texas Tech. Texas Tech has a really solid offense, especially with Taj Brooks, and they controlled Texas Tech in the second half. It was kind of a dominant performance that they put up against Texas Tech in that second half. Then you've got BYU who almost got upset against unranked Utah. Normally, BYU versus Utah, you look at the past few seasons, that's a really good game just on paper. This year, you look on paper, BYU should have blown them out, and they just barely survived. I tell you, the most surprising thing was not just that Georgia lost to Ole Miss, but the fashion in which they lost. They didn't just lose; they got dominated. The last
Turnover after
time,
turnover.
yep, the last time we saw Georgia lose that bad was the 2021 conference championship when they lost, I think it was like 41-24 against Alabama. And then they avenged that loss in the national championship. But we just don't see Kirby Smart teams get blown out like that. I mean, 28-10. Georgia, they scored off of a Jackson Dart interception in the first quarter. After that, Ole Miss stepped on the gas and they never looked back. I mean, that was a dominant performance. Isn't it crazy to think that the OU offense did better against Ole Miss than the Georgia offense did?
It is kind of crazy. I don't know how that happens. You talk about Georgia getting blown out under Kirby Smart, first or second season for him. Can't recall which, but 2017 losing to Auburn 45-17.
I remember that.
That was a low point for sure. That's probably the last real big regular season blowout loss they had. Don't get me wrong, 28-10. It's not a blowout numerically, but
They were
anybody who watched
dominated.
that game, they know that may as well have been 2800-10.
And
Um,
when was the last time that Alabama and Georgia both lost multiple regular season games?
I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you. You're probably going back to mm, mid to late 2010s
Gonna
before
have to
Georgia
find
got
out.
really, really good and Alabama had the I remember Alabama had a two-loss season at one point under the playoff where the committee really punished them after the final loss and bumped them out to 12 or 13 in the final ranking of the season.
Mm-hmm. I'll have to look that up.
Looking ahead to week 12, Georgia back in the spotlight hosting Tennessee. Tennessee, a 10-point dog. Um, After the Ole Miss game, I'm inclined to say Tennessee covers that 10 points. I don't know that they win, but I think they keep it a very close game. Um, Nebraska and USC facing off in a classic Big Ten battle. Um, the Nebraska Cornhuskers traveling out to Los Angeles as a 9-point dog to the Trojans. We've got two teams going up against each other there with coaches that seem to find ways to lose the most winnable games. USC obviously leads their games for three and a half quarters and then just craps an egg at the end. Nebraska pretty much just Nebraska's their way into whatever predicaments they find. LSU traveling to Florida. LSU a 4-point favorite there over the Gators. I like this one. I think Florida will probably keep this close early, but pretty much get dog walked out of the stadium, much like Texas last week. And last one here, speaking of Texas, believe we've got an old Southwest Conference matchup here. Texas traveling to Arkansas, Fayetteville, 13.5-point favorite over the Hogs. It'll be an interesting ball game there. Texas probably going to topple Arkansas pretty easily. Quinn Ewers will do what he does. He will struggle the first couple drives, and he will end up putting it in the end zone pretty quick after that. And I don't think they're going to look back. Any of those games that you think don't go the way of the favorite. So those games we've got Georgia, USC, LSU, and Texas as the favorites.
I think Texas is going to pretty easily win, but I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to appear as easy on the scoreboard. Sam Pittman is a really good head coach. He's faced Steve Sarkisian at Texas over the last few years and beaten him. If you remember 2021 when Steve Sarkisian took over his second game as a Texas head coach, he got blown out by Arkansas. Granted, two very different teams now than they were back then, but with what's his name, Bobby Petrino, having returned to Arkansas as the offensive coordinator, he's really got a good offense rolling over there. They're just a very inconsistent team. They're either putting up 50 points and hanging with the best teams, or they can't move 5 feet and they're blown out of the water like we saw against Ole Miss. I think it just kind of depends on the Arkansas team that shows up. But there's potential there. There's definitely potential there. Uh, I tell you that LSU Florida game, it will depend on exactly one thing. Is DJ Lagway playing? I said the same thing against Texas, and DJ Lagway didn't end up playing. Their third string quarterback was terrible. They never stood a chance. But I think if DJ Lagway was playing, Texas still probably wins by 3 scores at least. But I think it's a lot more competitive of a ball game. And if DJ Lagway is playing against LSU, especially with this game being at Florida, the way that they played against Tennessee a few weeks ago, sending them to overtime, I think they certainly have the potential to make that an interesting ball game. Uh, the game I'm going to this weekend, I'm traveling up to Madison, Wisconsin. Me and the fiance are going up there to watch Dylan Gabriel and the Oregon Ducks go up against Wisconsin. Oregon's only a 14-point favorite. I would not be surprised to see them easily cover that spread. I'd honestly be surprised if Wisconsin found a way to score, but I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for them. One other game that's interesting: Kansas versus BYU. BYU only a 2.5-point favorite. And they're playing in Provo, meaning on a neutral field, Kansas would probably be favored in that game. I'm intrigued to see how that goes. Tennessee and Georgia, though. Tennessee has a great defense. They have a really great defense. As much hype as their offense gets, their defense is 10 times better. And Carson Beck has struggled against good defenses this year. He was a turnover machine against Texas. He was a turnover machine against Alabama. He was a turnover machine against Ole Miss last week. Anytime he's faced a good defense, he is a turnover machine. And Nico Iamaleava and that Tennessee offense can very easily make the Georgia defense pay for those mistakes. The one thing Georgia's got going for them in this game, I think, is that they're playing in Athens, and Kirby Smart seldom loses multiple games. I mean, it's already incredibly rare that he's lost 2 games in one season, in one regular season. Now he's already lost 2, and he's going up against a higher ranked team. So it'll definitely be interesting. If Tennessee wins out, Tennessee is in the SEC championship game. With Georgia losing that game last week, Georgia has almost eliminated themselves from the SEC championship game. They would need Texas to drop a game, and Georgia would need to win out if they want to go to the SEC championship. But I'm telling you, that Tennessee Georgia game, I could very, very easily see that coming down to the final play. But in terms of just the teams who are favored, if there are any surprises there, I'd put BYU and Georgia on upset alert, on upset watch. I think they could very easily be surprised.
Yeah, for sure. One more thing I wonder about Georgia. The last time that they faced off in the regular season against a higher ranked team that was not Alabama. I don't know. I can't think of who that would have been.
I have the hunch. I'm gonna need to verify. I think it was 2017 against Auburn, that blowout loss. I think Auburn was ranked number 1 in the country, but I can't remember with certainty.
Well, let's see. No,
I'm
it was
looking it
vice
up right
versa. Auburn was number 10, Georgia was number 1.
now. Yeah. Well, then I don't know.
I mean, either. All right. Sooner Pocket Podcast. Make sure to check us out, www.soonerpocket.com. Ton of good content on there. Chris maintains a lot of that, as well as the YouTube channel. Let's go into the bye week. Look forward to the final 2 weeks of the season as much as we can. Hope that we can maybe find a way into some kind of a bowl game, just for the sake of keeping the bowl streak alive. Don't know that it happens, but we have hope. Stay safe. Thanks for listening. Boomer Sooner.
Boomer Sooner.